Hello and welcome to the Fit and Free podcast. This is a podcast for women who want it all, to feel strong and confident in their bodies, as well as enjoying a sneaky mug on a Friday night. I'm an exercise physiologist and sports nutritionist, here to teach you how to achieve your body goals without food and your body controlling your life. So let's jump in. When my client became aware of everything that I'm talking about in today's episode, she has dropped 5 kilos in the space of 6 weeks. And you guys, that is not a joke. And this gets to be your reality when you actually start looking at the root cause of why you actually can't lose weight. Because for so many women, they just think that they need to be stricter, that they need more willpower, they need more discipline. They need to keep starting again every Monday and be strict. But what they actually need to do is look at the real reason why they're not actually able to stick to the calorie deficit in the first place. And that is not going to come from restriction or from being good. It's going to come from being aware of the reason why you actually can't stick to it. And that's exactly what we are breaking down in this mini series of why you can't stick to your calorie deficit and the real reasons why you're actually not losing weight. So I'm super excited to dive into today's episode. Hello, you guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Fit and Free Potty. An official welcome back to this mini series of why you can't stick to your calorie deficit. So if you are new to the podcast and you haven't listened to last week's episode, I highly suggest you going back and listening to that one before this one, because that is part 1 of this 3-part series. And in that episode, I really dove deep into one of the main reasons why people can't stick to their calorie deficit, and that's simply because their calories are just too low. The calorie deficit is too big and it's too hard to stick to. And then what people think is they make it mean something about themselves, that they're not good enough, that they're not disciplined enough and they can't stick to it, when in reality, they've just set up their nutrition wrong. They're not eating enough, they're eating the wrong types of food, so they're not seeing the results that they want in their body. So that was episode 1. Now today, we are diving deep into episode 2. So if you were someone who is stuck in this vicious cycle of trying to lose weight, maybe you've been tracking your calories, you've been trying to stick to your calorie deficit, eat healthier, you're doing all of the things, but the weight is not coming off. Maybe now you're feeling frustrated, you're feeling confused, you're beating yourself up, you're feeling a bit of shame, you're feeling guilt because no matter what you do, you just can't be consistent. Maybe you're consistent for 3 weeks, then you have a slip up and then everything goes out the window for 3 weeks. Maybe you are good Monday to Friday and then you slip up every weekend. Maybe you're good for a couple of days and then it gets to the evening and then you've overeaten, you felt like you've slipped up, you failed, and then you're just starting again. I want to open your awareness to maybe the reason why you're stuck in this pattern is not because of your nutrition, but it's because of your mindset. And it's because you have been using food as an emotional crutch. You've been going to food every single time you've been triggered from an emotion, an uncomfortable situation, could even be a happy situation where you have maybe gone to food to self-soothe your emotions, or maybe you have gone to food to celebrate your emotions. But the matter of fact is that you're emotional eating. And emotional eating is then actually the real reason why you can't stick to your calorie deficit. And this is why no amount of discipline or willpower or following another strict diet is going to lead to success, because you haven't actually looked at the root cause of the problem, which is actually emotional eating. So regardless of how strict you are, how disciplined you are for a couple of weeks, as soon as you get triggered by that same emotion, that same pattern, that same habit, you're going back to food, then you're shaming yourself, you're beating yourself up, you're being, oh my God, why do I keep doing this? Then you're like, well, F it. I can't stick to this anyway. What's the point? You get stuck in these cycles, regardless of what diet you're doing, regardless what day of the week it is, regardless of anything, because the matter of fact is that you're not actually looking at that root cause of the problem. So that is what today's episode is all about, emotional eating, and why that is one of the biggest reasons why so many women are not able to stick to their calorie deficit. And this one hits close to home because I have struggled with a lot of emotional eating in the past. For me, growing up, food was such a big part of my life. My parents owned a restaurant, so from the moment I could remember, like I was in the kitchen helping them in the restaurant. I was helping prepare food. I was helping cut up and prep food. they owned a restaurant, they owned a takeaway shop as well. So I remember being just, 8 years old, and I'm, already in the kitchen helping hands. I remember cutting up tomatoes. I remember having to put the cheese in the prep containers, helping make meat pies. Like, from the day I was born, essentially, I was born into a food environment. So for me personally, food was a lot of love. Food was a lot of safety. Food was a lot of comfort. Food was around me all the time. And for me, so therefore, for a long time, I used and lent on food as an emotional support water bottle, essentially, because from early on, I learned that this is a safe place, that this is where happiness is, this is where people are, this is where connection comes, this is how money is made, essentially. You could even go there as well. Like, I learned so many patterns of how food was a core rock in my life, essentially. So as I got older and as I, was developing and learning all of these things, for a really long time, I personally didn't know how to process my emotions in a really healthy and proactive way. I was an avoidant. I would go to food. For me personally, like, I used to have a couple of triggers. Number one, anger was a massive trigger for me. Like, anytime I would face adversity, anytime I would have an argument with my partner back in the day, and oh my God, that used to happen so much because I used to be like so irritable, especially in and around food. I would, get irritable around food. I would then have a disagreement with my partner, and then that would send me into a spiral, and then I would go to food as a coping mechanism, which just fed into my, fear of weight gain even more. So it was just such a toxic cycle and so hard to be in. I also have used food as a crutch for boredom. I have also used food as a crutch for loneliness. So, like, trust me when I say I completely understand the pattern and how difficult it can be to break, because I was stuck in it for a really long time. So with all of that being said, when it comes to emotional eating doesn't have to be like this big thing. And this is where a lot of people, I think, are missing the awareness, because at the end of the day, emotional eating isn't always obvious, because it's not just about these big moments of, when we get really stressed, or binging on junk food when we're upset, or when we're going through a breakup, when we're going through something like really, really emotional, or, when you're on your period. In fact, emotional eating can be much more subtle, and we can be doing it without even realizing it. And this is where a lot of people are stuck in the problem, because they can't lose weight because of these micro emotional eating episodes that are happening like every single day. And whilst it doesn't seem like a lot of emotional eating, like a lot of food, like it's not this big thing, it's those small micro moments that actually do add up over time. And that's why you have to create awareness in and around the difference between an emotional hunger and physical hunger, and know the difference. So I want to give a few scenarios of where emotional eating can play out, because like I said, it doesn't have to be this big thing, but it can be these micro little things that add up every single day. So I want to give you some examples, because as I circle back in towards the end, the first step to breaking free of emotional eating is going to be awareness, and having the awareness that you are an emotional eater. Because if you don't have the awareness, you don't have the power to change. And as soon as you have the awareness, then you get your power back, and then you get to take responsibility on changing your habits and your patterns. But without actually understanding that you're doing it and actually realizing you're just stuck in these patterns, you're just going about day to day, and then you're just like, oh, I'm just so confused to why I'm not losing weight. So what I want to do now is just go through some specific examples of how emotional eating can play out. And let me know, send me a DM on Instagram if any of these resonate with you. And like, in saying this, like, I'm not intending, and I'm not shaming you for your behavior. And I don't want you to judge yourself. I don't want you to criticize yourself. I don't want you to go into any negative thought patterns. That's not the point of this. The point of this really is for you to learn more about yourself and build self-awareness around your toxic patterns in and around food so that you have the power to change them. Okay, we're not doing the blame, we're not doing the shame, we're not being hard on ourselves. We're coming in with a lot of compassion and curiosity towards ourselves so that you can understand your own patterns, you can understand why you're doing things so that you essentially can break free so that you can actually be successful with your weight loss. So let's get into it. Scene number 1, let's paint the picture. You've just wrapped up a busy day at work, feeling mentally exhausted and you are drained. You get home, you walk into the kitchen, and without even thinking, you just grab a snack. It's not that you're hungry, but you're just feeling a little bit low. You're feeling stressed. You're thinking about the emails. You're thinking about that conversation that you had with someone. Then you mindlessly snack on maybe it's a few nuts, a couple of handfuls of this, maybe it's some chocolate, just a little bit of a pick-me-up. You don't even realize that you are actually hungry. You just wanted something to lift your mood, right? Number 2. The reward snack. It's the end of the day and you feel like you have earned a treat. Maybe you're using the language of, I'm treating myself. Maybe you scroll on your phone watching Netflix and then you sit down on the couch and you're like, oh, I've had a big day. I deserve a bit of a treat. Maybe then you grab some popcorn and maybe you grab a cookie. So it feels like you're rewarding yourself to getting through the day. So you've already eaten dinner, but it's something to relax with. And again, it's not about being hungry. It's about using food as a way to reward yourself. Before you know it, the bag is empty. Number 3 is a stressful nighttime eating. So maybe you've had a stressful conversation or a tough day with a colleague. You're feeling emotionally drained and reach for something to eat. Maybe you choose something comforting, a bowl of cereal, some chips, a quick snack. You're not eating because you need nourishment. You're eating to distract yourself from the emotions that you're feeling. Number 4 is the stressful work snacker. It's mid-afternoon and work is piling up. You're in the middle of a tight deadline or a high-stakes project and the pressure is mounting. You feel stressed and suddenly your hand is in the snack bowl, or suddenly you're up, you're walking to the work lunchroom to get your hands on something sweet or salty. It's not because you're hungry, but because eating gives you a momentary sense of relief from that stress. Maybe you grab a handful of chips or something sweet to give yourself a mental break. Before you know it, you've mindlessly eaten several things. Then you start to beat yourself up and feel guilty. And then you're just like, why do I keep doing this? I want to give just one final scenario. It's the weekend. You've had such a big week at work and you just feel emotionally flat and drained. You just feel burnt out and you just feel like doing nothing. Then you lay on the couch, you put the TV on and you're sitting there, but you kind of feel numb. You kind of feel like that what you're doing is essentially like it's not fulfilling. And then you're feeling extremely bored. So then you're like, oh, I'm going to have something to eat. I'm going to go to the cupboard. And then you get up, you have some snacks, and then you eat it. Then you don't feel fully satisfied. Then you have a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. All of a sudden you've eaten so much and you're feeling, again, guilty. Why did I do this? Beat yourself up and promise yourself you're going to start again the next day. So those are the few scenes. I could probably go on this forever, but I would love to know, like I said, send me a DM on Instagram if any of these relate to you, because at the end of the day, it's like, they seem minor. So these seem minor, but then over the course of the week, they're just going to keep adding up to extra calories. And I don't want to scare someone with that, but it's at the same time, it's like, okay, cool. Like if we are utilizing food to soothe emotions or help move through emotions, then that's just something that we need to look at in order to grow. Because at the end of the day, emotional eating is not a form of self-respect. It's a form of self-sabotage. Because essentially, food has just become a coping mechanism in response to feelings that feel uncomfortable, for feeling stressed, feeling bored, feeling sadness, feeling anxiety, or even happiness, instead of eating to nourish the body. And the problem with this, of course, is then that is not in alignment with our goals, especially if our goal is weight loss. And the biggest problem with this is because we're utilizing food as an emotional coping mechanism, then what then happens is that can lead to eroding our sense of self-trust with food. And if we're lacking self-trust, then we lack self-belief that anything is then going to be possible for us. Because if we don't trust ourselves to stay in control of food, then we're going to lack the self-belief that changing our body composition, losing fat or building muscle is going to be next to impossible, because you have this belief of, I can't stick to anything. So therefore, this shame that we put on ourselves, this guilt and this shame that we feel, and then to rectify that, we then, have the all or nothing mentality of being like, well, I'll just be better, I'll just be good, which then just keeps us stuck in this cycle of lack of self-trust, because we're actually not looking at the root cause of the emotional eating and how to fix it. So with all of these scenarios in mind, I am not saying that it's bad to eat sweets. I'm not saying it's bad to have dessert after dinner and to sit on the couch and enjoy, some chocolate or whatever. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we have to look at our patterns around emotional eating. And if the reason why we're going to food is to cope with or deal with emotions, then that is the problem. I eat dessert every day, but it's because it's, coming from a place of, because it's, it's healthy to include all of these foods. It's just not healthy when they're coming in from a place of to soothe, to cope, because at the end of the day, it's never about the food. It's not, you don't want the food in these situations. And this is what the brain tricks us. We think we want the food because at the end of the day, like, emotional eating gives us temporary comfort. It's this quick fix, essentially, because what food is doing, it releases dopamine in the brain, which makes us feel good in the short term. But then that short term absolutely wears off. So this is why it's important that we look at this, so that essentially we stop sabotaging our goals, we can treat our bodies with self-respect, and that we can move through these unwanted patterns so we can be successful with our goals. So something that we have to bring awareness to is that every pattern that we have has a purpose, right? There's a secondary gain. Whether we like it or not, there's a reason why that emotional eating is present within your life. And this is where we have to have awareness of why we do it, because essentially we need to, number one, we need to bring compassion, because it's there for a reason. And at the end of the day, it's a safety net. It is there to make us feel good, because at the end of the day, when emotions arise and there is a lot, it's like sometimes it's really, you don't know what to do. So then, of course, it's a safety mechanism. It's a comfort. It's a insert your thing. So we have to have a lot of compassion to why it can be difficult to break these patterns, because it's there for a reason. So I want to dive into this a little bit deeper in terms of why emotional eating is hard to break. Because if you've got the awareness of why you're stuck in the pattern, now you might have awareness that you have it now. Now it's important to understand why you're doing it, so that you can also acknowledge that, see that, so that you can choose differently to help you create a new habit cycle in a proactive way instead of a reactive way. So like I said, emotional eating is hard to break because it's that temporary relief, right? Because it gives us that quick dopamine in the brain. It makes us feel good in the short term, which creates an association between food and emotional relief, which then reinforces the habit, right? So let's use mine as an example. I would have a disagreement. I would feel anger. I would then, I do not want to feel angry anymore. Instead of processing my anger in a proactive way, I would especially go to chocolate to process that anger. So then I had that emotional relief of no longer feeling anger. So therefore, my brain was like, cool, every time you go to chocolate when you feel angry, you're going to feel better. So of course, that's going to be a strong habit loop that I'm stuck in, because it's like essentially you're in flight or flight. Your sympathetic nervous system gets activated when you're getting into these emotions. So it's hard to make rational decisions. Everything is like, ooh, quick and fast. So if that habit loop is like, doing it without even thinking about it, so then of course you're going to be strong in that habit. This is why reflecting, and this is why I get my clients to always, always, always reflect after every moment, so that we can choose differently next time and utilize it as a learning process. So you can really see why, like, if we're angry, we're going to food, it's making us feel good. Then even though we know we're not hungry, our brain craves that instant gratification. And that's what it's all about. The next thing why it's hard to break is because it becomes so habitual. Emotional eating becomes a coping mechanism that we return to every time we're feeling these emotions. And then the more that we do it, the more the habit gets ingrained. It's like, when you get in your car and you're driving to work, you don't even have to think about it because the habit is so strong. That's the same pattern as emotional eating. That's how strong it can get. Then thirdly, another reason why it's really hard to break is because you're just not aware that you're doing it. Often we don't even recognize that we're emotionally eating. Like, how many times have you had a hard day at work and you're feeling a bit overwhelmed, you're feeling stressed, you're cooking dinner and you start snacking as you're eating? That could be definitely another place that we're emotionally eating. We don't even realize it, right? We're on autopilot. We're reaching for food. When we're bored, we're stressed without even realizing it happens. Because, like I already said at the beginning, emotional eating doesn't always have to be this big thing. It can be really subtle and it can be something small. So you miss the connection between your feelings and your food choices. And then lastly, a big one with this, why it's hard to break, is just because of cultural conditioning, right? Food is often tied to emotions, celebration, comfort, rewards. You even see it in marketing, right? This culture links food, makes it hard to break emotional eating habits. With that being said, that doesn't mean that you can't break the cycle. The reason why I explain this, like I already said, is because you need to understand what your pattern is, why you're doing it, so that you can figure out what you need to do instead to replace that cycle. Because like I said at the beginning of the episode, and I said I was going to circle back, is how do you change? Is awareness is going to be your first step. So let's use again my example of anger eating. It's like, okay, I had to build the awareness of my trigger of anger. I had to get super specific and understand what my triggers was so that I knew what started the habitual cycle. Because without that specific trigger, I wouldn't have been able to break my cycle because I wouldn't even been aware that I was doing it. So getting super, super clear on your specific triggers and every single time that you're emotional eating. Then you want to know why you're doing it. So for me, I was doing it because I was angry and I needed to not feel angry anymore. I didn't know how to process my anger. So then I went to food. Okay, sweet. Now that I have the awareness, now that I have why I'm doing it, now I can create a little action plan to being like, okay, cool. Now, next time I'm angry, I know I normally go to food. What am I going to do instead? And then how am I going to process that anger in a proactive way? So steps that I can then implement and integrate is, instead of going straight to the cupboard, I'm going to go to my bedroom. I'm going to pick up my pillow and I'm going to slam it on the bed. I'm going to allow the emotions to come out. I'm going to process them and regulate my body in a really proactive way instead of coping in a negative way that just makes me feel worse. Then I smash my pillow, get the anger out, move the emotions in the body, and all of a sudden I'm feeling regulated again without even having to go to food, right? And this is how we break the patterns. So what I want you to do, if any of this episode resonates with you, your first step to change is just going to be a detective on your own life and figure out where you are emotional eating. Because when you start being aware and see it within yourself is when you're going to have the power to change. Because at the end of the day, you guys, if you're struggling with this, no, you're not alone. So many women are struggling with it. I struggled with it for a really long time. And trust me when I say, when you get this under control, weight loss is easy. It really, really is. Because you're no longer going to continue to sabotage. There's no going to be this start again. There's no longer going to be battling against your emotions. And you're going to be able to stick to your calorie deficit in a way that feels sustainable. No more guilt, no more feeling like you're failing. And the coolest thing is that you're building a better relationship with yourself. You're building a better relationship with food. And then also you're improving your health in so many ways. So you guys, I really hope that this episode helped bring some awareness into maybe some patterns that you potentially could be struggling with food. If you like this episode, please, please, please take the time to scroll down to the bottom of Apple Podcasts, leave me a little review, because those little reviews, I read every single one, and they also help me get this podcast into other people's ears, which we want, because we want everyone to feel freaking confident in their body, have food freedom, and do things in a sustainable way. We love to see that. So share this with a friend, share this on your Instagram story. If you're listening, tag me so I know. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you more than you would ever know. And I hope you have an amazing rest of your day.